Alright, today we are doing 9-2 factoring using the distributive property. This can also be called factoring using the GCF. Throughout this video, if you need something repeated or if you need it to slow down, please ask the sub to stop it or back it up a little bit. And I will try to go slow. Alright, on this first example, it says use the distributive property to factor each polynomial. So you're going to use what we learned yesterday, and you're going to break down each individual term. Remember, your plus sign separates the terms, so you have two terms here. So the first thing I'm going to look at is 15. 15 can be broken down by 3 and 5, and then it has 1x. The next thing I'm going to do is break down my second term. 25 can be broken down by 5 and 5, and it has 2 x's. And then I'm going to go through and I'm going to circle just like I was doing the GCF. So each one has one set of 5's and one set of x. Alright, so like yesterday, you're going to write 5x. So that is your GCF. That goes on the outside of your parentheses. Alright, then you're going to look at your first term and you're going to see what's left. The only thing left is the number 3. So you're going to write that on the inside of the parentheses. Then you're going to look at your symbol that was in between. It's a plus sign, so you're going to drop that down. Then you go to your second term and you see what's left there. You have a 5 and you have an x. So you have 5x. So this is factoring using either the GCF or sometimes it's called the distributive property. Example, or letter B. You're going to do the same thing, only this time there's 3 terms. So when you find the GCF, you have to make sure that it's common between all 3 terms, not just 2. So the first thing you're going to do is break down 12xy. So 12 is 3 and 4, and then 2 and 2. Then you have 1x and 1y. Then you're going to break down 24. 24 is 6 and 4. 6 is 2 and 3. 4 is 2 and 2. Then you have 1x and 2 y's. Then you move to the last one, 30. You have 3 and 10. And then 2 and 5. You have 2 x's and 4 y's. Alright, now's when you're going to go through and you're going to circle what they have in common. So they have one set of 3. Each one of them has to have it, not just 2. They have one set of 2. They have 1x and 1y. Alright, so on the outside of your parenthesis, you're going to have 3 times 2 times x times y. On the inside, you're going to go up to your first term and you're going to see what's the only thing left. The only thing left is the number 2. Then your symbol comes from what's in between the first 2 terms. So plus. Then you're going to look at your second term and what's left there. You have 2 2's and a y. So that's 2 times 2 times y. Then your symbol here, you look at the symbol in between the last 2 terms, which is minus, and then you're going to look at what's left in your third term. So you have 5x and 3y's. Alright, now you're going to go through and put it together. So 3 times 2 is 6, and then you have x, y. Your first term, 2, doesn't change. Then you have 2 times 2, which is 4, and then y. Minus, now you have 5x, y to the third. And that is your final answer. Alright, example 2 says factor. What you're going to notice on example 2 is there are 4 terms. Down here at the bottom, I give you a little hint. When there's 4 terms, you're going to factor by grouping. What I mean by grouping is you are going to group your first 2 terms together and your last 2 terms together. So then you're going to look at your first 2 terms. You have 15a minus 3ab. So you're going to pull out the GCF of those 2 terms. So the biggest number that goes into 15 and 3 is 3. And then the only letter they have in common is A. So then if you take 15 divided by 3, you have 5 left, and A divided by A is 1, so it's just 5. Then you have minus 3 divided by 3 is 1, A divided by A is 1, and then you have your B left over. So then you go to your second parentheses. You have 20 minus 4b. So the biggest number that goes into 20 and 4 is going to be 4. They don't have any letters in common, so you don't bring any of those out. So then you say 20 divided by 4 is 5, minus 4 divided by 4 is 1, and then you have b left over. So immediately you should notice something. Alright, the first thing you should notice is that your parentheses match. When you factor by grouping, these 2 parentheses must match. Alright, so that becomes your first parentheses. Then your second parentheses becomes what is on the outside of both parentheses. So you have 3a plus 4. We're going to do this again. So if you need this repeated, have her back it up. If not, just wait till the next one. Alright, letter B. Same thing. You have 4 terms. So remember, your plus and minus signs separate them. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to group your first 2 together and your second 2 together. You're going to look at your first 2. So 2 and 7, they don't have any numbers in common, but they do have a letter in common, so you can pull that out. So the letter they have in common is X. If you want to put a 1 in front of it, that's fine, but you don't need it. So if I take an X out of this first term, I'm left with 2y. Plus, if I take an X out of the second term, I'm left with 7. So then this next set of parentheses, they don't really have any numbers in common and they don't have any letters in common. But remember, we talked about they don't have any numbers or letters in common. Their GCF is 1. And in this case, they both have a negative 1 in common. So if I take negative 2 divided by negative 1, that gives me positive 2y. If I take negative 7 divided by negative 1, that gives me positive 7. Just like in the last one, what's inside the parentheses matches. So that is your first parenthesis. Then what's on the outside becomes your second parenthesis. So that is factoring by grouping. You only use this form when there are 4 terms. That's the only time you use it. Alright, the last part of your homework is going to say solve, and then it's going to give you an equation. And I know this equation you've never really seen before. So the way you're going to solve something is first it has to equal 0. So this one is already set up correctly. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your first parenthesis, so you're going to say x minus 2, and you're going to set it equal to 0. Then you're going to take your second parenthesis, 4x minus 1, and you're going to set that equal to 0. Now you're just going to solve both of these like normal equations. So on this first one, if you're trying to get x by yourself, you're going to add 2 on both sides. And you have x equals 2. On the second one, you're going to add 1 to both sides. You have 4x equals 1. Then you're going to divide by 4. So you have x equals 1/4. Then the way you're going to write your answer is you're going to use brackets and you're going to go smallest to biggest. So you have 1/4 and 2. Alright, this last example here also says solve. So like I told you on the last one, the first thing you have to do is you have to get it equal to 0. So you can either subtract 4y or you can subtract 12y squared. It doesn't matter. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 4y. So I have 0 equals 12y squared minus 4y. The next thing I have to do on this one is I have to factor. So I'm going to look at my numbers. I'm going to see what is the biggest number that goes into 12 and 4. So that's going to be 4. Then I'm going to look at the letters. How many y's do they have in common? They have 1 y in common. So then on the inside of the parentheses, 12 divided by 4 is 3. You had 2 y's and you took 1 away, so you have 1 left. Minus, then you have 4y divided by 4y, which is 1. Alright, now this is factored. So once you have it factored, this is where you're going to split it up and you're going to set it equals to 0. So you're going to take this outside part, you're going to say 4y equals 0. Then you're going to take your inside part, 3y minus 1, and you're going to set that equal to 0. Just like in the last example, you have to solve each equation. So on the first one, you're going to divide by 4. Like always, 0 divided by anything is 0. On the second one, you're going to add 1 to both sides. So you have 3y equals 1. Then you're going to divide by 3. And you have y equals 1/3. Just like in the last one, you're going to write your answers in brackets. You're going to start with the smallest, which is 0. And then the next one is 1/3. Again, if you need anything repeated or need it slowed down, have her press pause. Here is your assignment. Make sure you get it copied down, and she also has a copy of the book page to display for you, so make sure you get this written down. Those of you that need to finish taking your test, you can finish it on Monday.